The ceiling of the cavern was so close to my mask that I could feel the cold, jagged limestone pressing against my skull with every exhale. In the world of cave diving, they call this a restriction. To anyone else, it's a coffin. I lay flat in the silt, my twin tanks scraping against the roof, my breath coming in slow, measured rasps that sounded like a saw cutting through bone in the silence of my hood. I am a recovery diver by trade. People hire me to pull things out of places where the sun has never reached. Scientific equipment, wedding rings lost in cenotes, and, more often than I'd like to admit, the bloated, blue-lipped bodies of divers who thought they were better than the cave. But this dive, 300 feet beneath the Yucatan jungle in a system known only as the Vein, was different. I wasn't looking for a body. I was looking for a fault. The geological survey team had reported a spatial anomaly in the lowest chamber. They said the water was flowing backward, upward into the mountain, defying the pressure gradients of the aquifer. They offered me enough cash to retire and buy a boat in the Keys. I should have asked why they weren't sending a drone. I checked my pressure gauge, 2,800 psi. My reel was tethered to a solid limestone anchor 50 feet back. The line, my umbilical cord to the surface, trailed behind me into the pitch-black void. I pushed forward, using my fingertips to pull my body through the silt. 1 inch, 2 inches. The water was 68 degrees, but I was sweating inside my dry suit. Then, the restriction opened. My primary light cut through the crystal-clear water, revealing a chamber so vast that the beam couldn't find the far wall. It was a cathedral of stone, filled with stalactites that looked like rows of hanging needles. But the rock wasn't the usual cream-colored limestone. It was black, a deep obsidian black that seemed to drink the light of my 4,000 lumen torch. I checked my depth, 320 feet. At this depth, the nitrogen starts to play tricks on you. They call it the martinis. It's a euphoria that makes you want to take your regulator out and offer it to a fish. I bit down hard on the rubber mouthpiece, forcing myself to focus on the mission. The anomaly was in the center of the chamber. As I swam closer, I saw it, a vertical fissure in the floor about 10 feet wide. The water wasn't flowing, it was vibrating. The silk and debris in the water were being pulled toward the fissure in a slow, hypnotic spiral. But there was no suction. There was no pressure differential. It was as if the water were being invited down by something. I hovered over the edge, shining my light into the crack. It went down forever. I unclipped a glow stick, cracked it until it hissed with neon green light, and dropped it. I watched it fall. 10 feet, 50 feet, 100. Then it stopped. It didn't hit a floor. It hit something that was moving. The glow stick didn't bounce. It was absorbed. A massive, pale shape drifted past the light, something translucent and fleshy like the belly of a deep-sea ray, but 1,000 times larger. It had no fins, no scales. It moved with a slow, undulating rhythm, its surface covered in thousands of tiny, vibrating cilia. I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my ears. The pressure was spiking. My dive computer began to beep, a frantic, high-pitched scream in the silence. Depth 340, 360, 380. I wasn't sinking. The floor of the cave was rising. I turned to swim back toward the restriction, my fins kicking up a cloud of silt that turned the water into a blinding soup of gray. I fumbled for my guideline, my fingers searching for the thin, braided nylon that was my only way home. But when I found it, it didn't lead back to the tunnel. The line was tight. It was being pulled into the fissure. I grabbed the line with both hands, bracing my fins against a rock outcropping. Whatever was down there had snagged my reel. It was reeling me in like a hooked fish. I reached for the diving knife strapped to my thigh, the cold steel slick in my gloved hand. I hacked at the line, the nylon fraying under the blade. With a final snap, the line went slack. I was untethered. In a cave system as complex as the vein, being off the line is a death sentence. You have about 3 minutes of orientation before the silt settles and you lose the sense of which way is up. I turned off my primary light. It's a trick they teach you in advanced training. In a total silt out, your light only blinds you by reflecting off the particles. If you turn it off, sometimes your eyes can pick up the faint, ambient glow of the exit, if there is any. But there was no exit light. Instead, there was a biological glow. From the fissure below, a soft, rhythmic pulsing of bioluminescence began to fill the chamber. It was a sickly, pale violet. It revealed the true scale of the entity. It wasn't just in the fissure, it was the fissure. The entire floor of the cave was a single, massive organism, a giant, prehistoric anemone that had grown into the very crust of the earth. And it was waking up. The walls of the cave began to contract. The black stone wasn't stone at all. It was a calcified shell, a protective layer for the soft, pulsing tissue underneath. The stalactites above me began to move, swiveling like the eyes of a crab. They weren't rocks, they were feeding tubes. One of the tubes brushed against my arm. The sandpaper texture tore through the heavy trilaminate of my dry suit as if it were tissue paper. I felt the bite of the freezing water against my skin, followed immediately by a searing, chemical burn. The thing was injecting an enzyme into me. It wasn't trying to kill me, it was trying to tenderize me. I drifted in the center of the room, my buoyancy lost as the water rushed into my suit. I was becoming heavy. I was becoming part of the silt. I looked at my pressure gauge, 500 psi. I was breathing the last of my life. The air tasted of oil and panic. I reached into my utility pocket and found the emergency lift bag, a bright orange balloon meant to float heavy objects to the surface. I didn't attach it to a reel, I attached it to myself. I jammed the regulator of my pony bottle into the opening and purged the valve. The bag inflated with a violent roar, the orange silk blooming like a flower in the violet dark. The sudden lift jerked me upward, my spine cracking as the force pulled me toward the ceiling. I didn't care about decompression sickness. I didn't care about the bends or my lungs exploding. I just wanted out of the stomach of the mountain. I hit the ceiling, but it wasn't hard rock anymore. It was soft, yielding flesh. The lift bag pressed against the roof of the organism, and for a second I thought I was trapped. Then, the pressure of the air in the bag caused the tissue to tear. I was sucked upward through a sphincter of muscle and cold water. I moved through a series of organic tunnels, my suit shredding, my mask being ripped from my face. I was drowning in a mixture of salt water and digestive fluids. I broke the surface of a small, hidden pool in the jungle floor a mile away from the original entrance. I collapsed onto the limestone, gasping for air that smelled of wet earth and rot. My body was covered in chemical burns, and my left arm was a ruin of shredded muscle. I lay there for hours, watching the stars through the canopy of the jungle. I waited for the sensation of the earth moving, for the mountain to breathe again. I never went back to the survey team. I never claimed my money. I moved to a desert, a place where the nearest water is 1,000 miles away and the ground is solid, dry, and silent. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed in the heat of the night, I feel a vibration in the floor. It's a slow, rhythmic thump, thump that has nothing to do with the wind or the traffic. I look at the glass of water on my nightstand and I see the ripples. The earth isn't a rock, it's a shell. And whatever is inside is starting to get very, very hungry.